No one in the little town of Willow Creek could remember a time when 7-year-old caramel brown skin girl Lorrain Lovie wasn't smiling. Some children were known for being smart. Some were known for being athletic. Some were known for getting into trouble. Lorraine was known for making people feel loved. She was only 10 years old, yet somehow she noticed things adults missed. She noticed when Mrs. Jenkins sat alone on a church pew after her husband died. She noticed when the grocery store clerk looked tired. She noticed when another child was left out at recess. And whenever she noticed someone hurting, she did something about it. A handwritten note, a flower picked from the roadside, a hug, a joke, a prayer, small things, yet somehow they always seemed to be exactly what people needed. When Lorraine entered a room, it felt brighter. Not because she demanded attention, but because she gave it away. People felt seen around her, loved around her, important around her. So when Lorraine became sick, it felt impossible. The kind of thing that happened somewhere else, to someone else. Not to Lorraine, not to the girl whose heart seemed too good for such suffering. It began during winter, a cough, then exhaustion, then fevers that came and went like unwelcome visitors. At first, her parents weren't worried. But Lorraine didn't recover. Weeks turned into months. Doctors ordered tests. Specialists entered the picture. Lorraine's mother, Sarah, could always tell how bad the news was. She watched their faces, the hesitation, the quiet sigh before difficult conversations. By spring, she understood something terrible. The doctors weren't looking for a cure anymore. They were trying to buy time. One evening, after Lorraine had fallen asleep, Sarah sat in her car in the hospital parking lot. The rain tapped softly against the windshield. She gripped the steering wheel until her knuckles turned white. Then she finally broke. The kind of crying that comes from a wound so deep it feels as though your soul is tearing. God, please, please don't take my little girl. Please let tomorrow be different. But heaven seems silent, and silence can feel cruel when your heart is breaking. Back home, Lorraine slept peacefully. Her parents were beginning to prepare for a future they couldn't bear to imagine. Yet while fear was growing in everyone around her, something completely different was growing inside Lorraine. Peace. A strange, unshakable peace, the kind many adults spend lifetimes searching for. One night, several months later, Lorraine awoke suddenly. The room was dark except for a sliver of moonlight. Then she noticed she wasn't alone. Someone was sitting beside her bed. Lorraine wasn't frightened, not even a little, because the moment she saw him, she knew exactly who he was. A warmth filled the room. His eyes held a kindness deeper than words. Completely loved, completely safe. "Jesus?" she whispered. He smiled. "Hello, Lorraine." The fear she had carried for months disappeared instantly. She knew she wasn't facing it alone. Jesus reached out his hand, not to take her away, not yet, only to comfort her. And for the next hour, the little girl sat quietly speaking with the one who had conquered death. A few days later, Sarah walked into the bedroom. Instead, she found Lorraine smiling at the ceiling. A brilliant, joyful smile. "What are you smiling about?" her mother asked. Lorraine replied, "I talked to Jesus last night." Sarah froze. The instant when a child says something you cannot explain. "What do you mean?" "He sat right there." Lorraine pointed to a chair near the window. "He talked with me." "What did he say?" Lorraine folded her hands. "He said lots of people are hurting. He said they're looking at the wrong thing. They're looking at my sickness. But he wants them to see him." And from that day forward, strange things began happening around the little girl everyone thought was dying. The first person everyone talked about was Mr. Peter Lawson. After his wife, Margaret, passed away, something inside him died too. People would see him sitting alone, staring at nothing. One afternoon, Peter visited Lorraine. He handed her a bouquet of yellow daisies, Margaret's favorite flowers. Lorraine gently touched a petal and said, "Those were her favorites, weren't they?" "Margaret's." Peter froze. "How do you know that?" Lorraine smiled toward the chair by the window. "Jesus told me she still loves them." Peter felt tears gathering. He hadn't cried since the funeral. "She isn't gone," Lorraine said. "Jesus said death only separates people for a little while. Love keeps them together until he brings them home." Peter began sobbing, not because pain vanished, but because hope entered the room. 2 weeks later, Michael came to visit. Ever since his brother died, fear ruled his life. He feared sickness, storms, and death. When he entered Lorraine's room, he looked nervous. "Are you scared?" he whispered. Lorraine smiled. "No, not anymore, because I know who's waiting on the other side. When I was little, Daddy carried me across a river. I wasn't scared because Daddy was holding me. I feel the same way now." Even Pastor Daniel struggled. He preached about hope, but secretly he wrestled with why God would allow a child like Lorraine to suffer. "Do you ever get angry with God?" he asked. "No," Lorraine said. "Jesus never promised I'd understand everything. He only promised he'd stay with me. Pastor, you don't have to understand everything to trust him." The child had reminded him of the sermon he needed. Rachel had lost her baby daughter years before. "I still miss her," she cried. "People think I should be over it by now." Lorraine shook her head. "Love doesn't work like that." "Jesus says your daughter knows how much you love her." Rachel covered her face. Months of pain came pouring out while Lorraine simply held her hand. In the weeks that followed, Rachel started smiling again. By autumn, something remarkable was happening. The angry became calmer, the bitter kinder, and the lonely felt seen. It was as though God had taken the weakest person in town and made her the strongest. One evening, Lorraine overheard her father crying. "What am I supposed to do without her?" he whispered. "We're losing our little girl." The pain in their voices cut into Lorraine's heart. Then she felt that familiar warmth. Everyone else saw her pain and death drawing near. But Lorraine realized her sickness had not become her purpose. Love had, and she intended to share it every day she had left. Winter came early. A cold wind drifted through Willow Creek, carrying a quiet sadness. The doctors had very little to say. The time they had prayed against was finally near. News spread throughout the town. Store owners locked their doors. Church members gathered. Nobody wanted to imagine Willow Creek without Lorraine. Inside, every light seemed softer, every sound quieter. Lorraine lay in bed beneath her grandmother's quilt. Her breathing was slow and gentle. Sarah sat beside her, afraid that if she loosened her grip even for a moment, her daughter might slip away. Across the room, Lorraine's father sat with his face in his hands. He wanted to memorize everything, the shape of her face, the sound of her breathing. People become afraid of forgetting when heartbreak comes. Visitors arrived. Peter Lawson came first. "Thank you," he whispered, "for giving me hope again. You reminded me that God wasn't finished with me." Lorraine replied, "Jesus wasn't finished with you." Rachel came next, holding her daughter's photograph. "You helped me believe I'd see her again," she sobbed. Lorraine squeezed her fingers. "You will," Rachel cried, not because she doubted, but because she believed. The pastor stood speechless until he laughed through his tears. "You've been teaching me more than I've taught you." Lorraine shook her head. "Don't remember me. Remember Jesus," the pastor cried. Outside, the snow began falling. Hundreds of people gathered, singing a hymn. The quiet melody floated through the winter air. They stood in the cold for hours simply because they loved her. Lorraine seemed to be looking past everyone. A smile slowly spread across her face. "Oh, they're here, the angels. They're beautiful." The room became completely still, heavy with a peace from heaven. Then her face lit up with a joy too big for a human body. "Jesus!" Her mother began sobbing. Her father grabbed the bed rail, his knees weak. Lorraine's eyes never moved, fixed on the one who stood with her. "I love you, Mommy." Sarah broke completely, holding her daughter close. Lorraine reached toward her father's face. He pressed her hand against his cheek. "I love you, Daddy. I love you too, Princess." "Thank you for helping me get here." She was talking about her whole life, every bedtime story, every prayer, her breathing grew softer and slower, the way a child breathes when drifting to sleep. She spoke one final time. "Don't be sad for me. They only see death, but I see home. He's beautiful." And with one final peaceful breath, Lorraine went home. The news spread before sunrise. Willow Creek mourned, schools canceled, businesses closed, flowers covered the Lovies' front yard by afternoon. Everyone understood that the heart of the town was growing still. Her funeral was overflowing, not because she had become famous, but because she had simply loved people, and somehow that had changed everything. Everyone finally understood. Her final days were about healing. Years later, people still spoke of the girl who smiled through suffering. Whenever someone asked why so many lives changed, they would point toward the small hill where Lorraine rested and tell her story. Lorraine's story reminds us that faith is not the absence of pain. True faith is trusting God even when life is not okay. Her greatest healing came in her heart and became a source of healing for others. While others saw death, she saw home. Hope is not found in having all the answers. It is found in trusting the one who does. Faith does not always change our circumstances, but it can change how we walk through them. Hope is not believing that death will never come. Hope is believing that death does not have the final word. And when we place our trust in Jesus, what looks like an ending may actually be the beginning of coming home.